When the results of the Galactic Census pinged the Central Bureau of Genetic Records, the system erupted in a kaleidoscope of flashing alerts. Crixel Yorm, a senior analyst with a record for meticulous work, nearly dropped his nutrient orb when the holoscreen lit up with the anomaly human genetic profile flagged -50% unclassified DNA detected. Immediate review required. Crixel's iridescent green scales shifted to a worried shade of blue. Unclassified? That's not possible. He swiped the alert aside and accessed the full file. The flagged entry belonged to one Nathaniel Nate Hollis of Earth, a Class G planet known for its eccentric but relatively harmless species. The image accompanying the file showed a man in his mid-30s with tousled brown hair and a mischievous grin that somehow managed to be both endearing and infuriating. Yet nothing in the visual suggested anything anomalous. Crixel's webbed fingers hovered over the screen as he opened the genome scan. His pupils constricted in shock. Half of the human's DNA sequence shimmered red, blinking the words "unclassified sequences detected." Before Crixel could initiate a system reboot, his supervisor, Groman, floated into the office on his anti-grav disk. The gelatinous administrator was known for his cautious, some would say paranoid approach to Galactic Bureau regulations. "What is this commotion, Yorm?" Crixel gestured to the screen. "There's been a flag in the Human Genome Archive. This individual, Nathaniel Hollis, is showing 50% unclassified DNA." Groman's eyes widened, his body rippling in alarm. 50%? That's unprecedented. Dispatch an immediate priority notice to the High Curia. If this anomaly breaches the Cosmic Genetic Archive, it could spell disaster for our galaxy's biological order. Disaster? Crixel frowned. Isn't that an overreaction? It's just one human. Groman's tendrils quivered. Yorm, unclassified DNA at this scale raises the specter of contamination or interference. Earth could be harboring entities beyond our understanding. Crixel tried to suppress a sigh as Groman blustered. His gaze drifted back to Nate's grinning photo. That guy didn't look like the kind of person who would incite galactic panic. Meanwhile, on Earth, Nate Hollis was oblivious to the chaos brewing among the stars. He was halfway through a bowl of cereal in his modest apartment when a shimmering portal opened in his living room. "Oh, come on," Nate groaned, setting his spoon down. "I just paid off the carpet cleaner." Two figures stepped through the portal. One was tall and insectoid, with segmented eyes and twitching antennae. The other was squat and metallic, with a rectangular body that reflected the fluorescent lighting of Nate's kitchen. Greetings, the insectoid chirped. "I am Zilfark of the Galactic Census delegation. This is my associate, Clordix. Are you Nathaniel Hollis?" Yeah, Nate stared at the intruders. "Who's asking?" "We are here to verify your genetic integrity," Zilfark said, antennae quivering. "My what now?" "Your DNA," Clordix replied in a deep, resonant tone. "There is an anomaly in your file. We must escort you to the Galactic Census Bureau for further analysis." "Anomaly?" Nate frowned. "Wait a second. What's going on? And what if I say no?" Clordix tapped a button on his tablet. A beam of light shot out, disintegrating Nate's coffee table. Nate threw up his hands. "Fine, but you're paying for that." Nate's journey to the Galactic Census Bureau, a dazzling city of crystalline spires suspended in the void, did little to clear up his confusion. The moment he stepped out of the transport pod, he was bombarded with questions, scans, and a confusing array of alien languages. Eventually, he was ushered into a vast chamber where a being resembling a fusion of a jellyfish and a storm cloud presided over a team of researchers. "This human must be quarantined immediately," the being boomed. "Oh, hold up," Nate protested. "No one's quarantining me. I don't even know what's happening." The room fell silent. Hundreds of alien eyes turned to him, their gazes a mix of fear, curiosity, and suspicion. Crixel, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. "Mr. Hollis, your DNA contains sequences that do not match any known genome in the Galactic Archive. Do you know anything about your genetic history that might explain this?" Nate hesitated, his usual bravado faltering. "I don't know. My dad died when I was a kid. I barely remember him. My mom's side always said we were special, but I figured they just meant stubborn. Zilfark chirped thoughtfully. Then we must analyze your maternal lineage as well. If your father's lineage is unavailable, the mother's genome will clarify this anomaly. Are you saying you're testing my mom? Nate asked. Yes. You'd better not freak her out with a portal to her living room. She'll throw a shoe at you. Crixel suppressed a chuckle as he activated a communicator. We'll handle it with discretion. Nate's mother, Diane Hollis, was located within hours. She greeted the Galactic Census delegation with a calmness that unnerved even Chlordix. Her DNA was promptly analyzed, and the results flashed across the Bureau's central console: 100% Homo sapiens. No anomalies detected. The room buzzed with confusion. This complicates matters, Zilfark muttered. If the mother is entirely human, then the anomaly must originate exclusively from the father's lineage. Great, Nate muttered, sitting back. So, what's the verdict? Am I secretly a dragon or something? Crixel turned back to the scan. The anomaly in Nate's DNA seemed to pulse, almost alive, defying all attempts to decode it. As the Bureau scanners intensified their efforts, the central console let out a piercing alert. Error. Unknown interference detected. The room trembled. Lights flickered. And for the first time in millennia, the Galactic Census Bureau confronted the terrifying possibility that some mysteries might be beyond even their comprehension. The tremors in the Galactic Census Bureau subsided, but the room was thick with tension. Every alien present, from the metallic skin Chlordix to the gelatinous administrator Grellman, fixated on the holoscreen displaying Nate's genetic scan. The flashing word error loomed over the room like a thundercloud. Nate tapped his foot impatiently. Okay, so what does that mean? Is it broken? Because if you guys called me all the way here for a tech glitch, I'm going to need some serious compensation. Crixel glanced at Grellman, whose gelatinous form had turned an anxious shade of amber. The equipment is not malfunctioning, Crixel said cautiously. The interference appears to be external. Something in your DNA is actively resisting analysis. Actively resisting, Nate repeated. You make it sound like my DNA's got a mind of its own. And that may not be entirely inaccurate, Zilfark chirped nervously, his antennae vibrating. Before Nate could process that unsettling idea, an aide rushed into the chamber, their voice high-pitched and frantic. Administrator Grellman, we're receiving inquiries from the High Curia. They demand an immediate explanation for the anomaly and its potential impact on the cosmic genetic archive. Of course they do, Grellman grumbled, his body quivering. Yorm, Zilfark, prepare a preliminary report, and ensure this human doesn't touch anything else. Nate frowned. Hey, I haven't touched anything. Yet Grellman muttered darkly. As the room descended into a flurry of activity, Crixel pulled Nate aside. Mr. Hollis, we need to examine your father's background more thoroughly. Are you certain you know nothing about his lineage? Certain as I can be, Nate said with a shrug. Dad passed away when I was 2. Cancer, I think. Mom didn't like to talk about him much. I've got a couple of old photos somewhere, but that's it. Crixel nodded, his scales rippling with thought. Do you know where your father was from? Somewhere in the Midwest. Michigan, maybe? He wasn't around long enough for me to ask for a family tree. Crixel's webbed fingers tapped on his data tablet. Earth's records may provide some clues. We will need to access them. Good luck with that, Nate said. The DMV on Earth barely knows what day it is. I can't imagine their ancestral archives are much better. Back on Earth, a team of Galactic Census technicians disguised as human researchers arrived at a genealogy center in Michigan. Despite their attempts at blending in, the staff became suspicious when one technician, Clack, inadvertently consumed a stapler thinking it was a human nutrient device. Why are you eating office supplies? The manager asked. Glaring. Clack's partner hastily stepped in. Research fatigue. Happens to the best of us. Now, about those Hollis family records. The humans, mercifully, were eager to assist. Within hours, the team uncovered a fragmented paper trail leading to Nate's paternal grandfather, Henry Hollis, who had reportedly disappeared in the early 2240s under mysterious circumstances. The records noted rumors of Henry's fascination with celestial phenomena and a cryptic phrase etched into the margins of his journal, "The sky is not ours alone." When the findings reached Crixell, he felt a pang of unease. "There's a pattern here," he murmured, scanning the files. "Henry Hollis disappears after an encounter with unexplained phenomena, and now Nathaniel exhibits unclassified DNA sequences. What are the odds this is a coincidence?" Nate, sitting nearby, raised his hand. "Not a math guy, but I'm guessing low." "That would be correct," Crixell said dryly. "So, what now?" Nate asked. "We continue the analysis," Crixell replied. "The interference in your genome suggests an external force. Something is interacting with your DNA in ways we do not yet comprehend." Nate scratched his head. "What kind of external force? Like aliens?" "More like a force beyond aliens," Crixell said, his tone grim. Nate stared at him. "You're telling me I've got cosmic—" "What?" "Space magic in my genes." "Not magic," Crixell said quickly, "but possibly a connection to entities or phenomena outside our observable universe." Before Nate could argue further, alarms blared across the bureau. Zilfark scuttled into the room, his antennae vibrating wildly. "Crixell, the High Curia is demanding we escalate this case to the Oversight Conclave." Crixell groaned. The Oversight Conclave was a notoriously conservative body of galactic leaders who viewed anomalies as threats to be eradicated rather than studied. If they took control of Nate's case, it could mean quarantine or worse. "We're not handing him over," Crixell said firmly. "Not until we understand the anomaly." "And how do you propose we do that?" Zilfark asked. "We'll test the interference directly," Crixell said. "If we can isolate the source, we can present a complete report to the High Curia before they intervene." "You're going to poke my DNA with a stick?" Nate asked. "Metaphorically," Crixell replied. The containment chamber was a sterile, gleaming sphere lined with instruments designed to measure and interact with DNA sequences at a molecular level. Nate stood in the center, surrounded by flickering lights and faint hums of energy. Still, Crixell instructed from the observation booth. "Not like I've got anywhere to go," Nate muttered. As the machines began their work, Nate felt a strange warmth spreading through his body. The instruments probed deeper into his genetic code, targeting the unclassified sequences. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and a deep, resonant hum filled the chamber. Nate's eyes widened as an ethereal glow emanated from his skin. The interference in his DNA surged outward, forming tendrils of shimmering light that lashed at the containment walls. "Shut it down," Zilfark cried. "I can't," Crixell yelled. "The anomaly is amplifying itself." Inside the chamber, Nate clutched his head, overwhelmed by the sensations coursing through him. Images flashed in his mind, vivid, incomprehensible scenes of vast, swirling voids and towering beings of light. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the glow vanished. Nate collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath. "What was that?" he managed to choke out. Crixell stared at the readouts, his scales rippling in alarm. "The interference isn't just a genetic anomaly," he said. "It's a signal." "A signal from what?" Nate asked, his voice shaky. Crixell turned to him, his expression grim. "Not what? From who?" Nate sat on the floor of the containment chamber, trying to process what Crixell had just said. "A signal. Like, someone's trying to call me through my DNA." "Not exactly," Crixell replied, his voice tight. "It's less a call and more a beacon. Something in your DNA is emitting a pattern designed to attract attention." Attention from who? Nate asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted the answer. Zilfark, still jittery from the containment malfunction, interjected. "If it's broadcasting, that means someone or something might already be listening. The consequences could be catastrophic." Before Crixell could respond, Grellman's massive, gelatinous form entered the observation room, his hue shifting to an irate orange. "What have you done, Yorm? The High Curia is already suspicious of our delay, and now you've activated an unknown signal. Do you realize the implications if this is traced to the Bureau? It wasn't intentional, Crixel snapped. The signal was embedded in the anomaly. We need time to decipher it before the Curia escalates this further. Time is a luxury we don't have, Groman boomed. The Oversight Conclave is convening to demand your subjects' immediate containment and potentially termination. Nate, still shaky but recovering his sarcastic edge, stood up. Termination? Seriously? I didn't even break anything. Groman glared, or at least wobbled menacingly. This isn't about you, human. It's about the risk your existence poses to galactic stability. Yeah, well, if you guys didn't want unstable, maybe don't shine a giant space laser at my DNA, Nate shot back. Zilfark winced. He has a point, Administrator. Groman growled in frustration but didn't argue further. Fine, Yorm, you have one galactic cycle to uncover the nature of this signal. If you fail, the High Curia will take over, and trust me, they will not be as lenient. With that, Groman floated out, leaving the room in a tense silence. Crixel wasted no time. With Nate reluctantly cooperating, the Bureau's researchers began analyzing the beacon embedded in his DNA. They constructed intricate models of the signal, mapping its frequency and decoding fragments of its transmission. What they found left them speechless. It's a message, Crixel murmured, staring at the decoded fragments. Or rather, a message wrapped in a language we've never seen before. Nate peered over his shoulder. The holographic projection displayed a series of swirling glyphs that seemed to shimmer and shift as he looked at them. What does it say? We don't know yet, Crixel admitted, but it's directed at something or someone very specific. As if on cue, the alarms blared again. Zilfark burst into the lab, his mandibles clicking in panic. Crixel, we've detected a disturbance on the outer edges of the Bureau's territory. An unidentified ship is approaching. Approaching, Nate said. You mean like, here? To this place? Zilfark nodded. The ship is emitting a signal that matches the one in your DNA. The room went cold. We have to intercept it, Crixel said, already moving toward the command deck. If this ship is responding to the signal, it might hold the answers we need. And what if it's hostile? Zilfark asked. Then we hope it's not very good at aiming, Nate muttered as he followed. The alien ship came into view on the Bureau's observation monitors. It was massive, easily dwarfing the Bureau's floating city. Its surface shimmered with an otherworldly light, and its design defied conventional geometry, with curves and angles that seemed to shift as they were observed. Crixel's scales turned an anxious shade of pale. That's no ordinary vessel. Its technology is far beyond anything in the galaxy. Great, Nate said, crossing his arms. So, what's the plan? Wave a white flag and hope they're friendly. Before anyone could answer, a beam of light shot out from the ship, enveloping the Bureau in a shimmering field. The monitors flickered, and the room was plunged into a tense silence. Then, a voice echoed through the chamber, not spoken, but directly transmitted into their minds. Beacon identified. Genetic carrier located. Initiating contact. Nate staggered as the words flooded his thoughts, more intense and vivid than any normal voice. Crixel. I think they mean me. The beam of light intensified, and before anyone could react, Nate was lifted off the ground and pulled into the air. Nate, Crixel shouted, reaching for him, but the human vanished in a flash of light. When Nate's vision cleared, he found himself standing in what appeared to be the interior of the alien ship. The walls pulsed with light, and the air felt charged with energy. Before him stood a figure, its form humanoid but indistinct, as though it were composed of pure light and shadow. Welcome, carrier, the being said, its voice resonating both in the air and within Nate's mind. Carrier, Nate asked, his voice trembling. Carrier of what? The being extended a hand, and a cascade of images filled Nate's mind, stars being born and dying, galaxies colliding, and an ancient civilization reaching across the cosmos. You carry the remnants of our kind, the being said. Our essence was encoded into your lineage long ago, to preserve our knowledge and ensure our survival. Nate's mouth went dry. Wait, are you saying my dad or my grandpa was part of some alien experiment? Not an experiment, the being corrected. A trust. Your lineage was chosen to safeguard our legacy. But now, the beacon has activated because the galaxy faces a threat one only our knowledge can confront. Nate blinked, his head spinning. So, what am I supposed to do? I'm just a guy. I don't even recycle properly. The being's light seemed to brighten. You will learn, and you will not face this alone. Before Nate could ask what that meant, the chamber around him dissolved, and he was back in the Bureau's observation room. Crixall and the others stared at him, their expressions ranging from awe to terror. What just happened? Crixall demanded. Nate exhaled shakily. I just met my cosmic relatives. Nate sat in the observation room, his hands trembling as he recounted the encounter. The room was eerily silent as he finished. They said I'm carrying their essence, Nate said, struggling to find the words. Like I'm some kind of intergalactic USB drive. Crixall's scales shimmered with unease. If this is true, it would mean your DNA contains not just information, but perhaps the genetic blueprint of an extinct civilization. That level of encoding would explain the interference we detected. But why now? Zilfark asked. Why activate the beacon after all this time? Nate frowned. They mentioned something about a threat, something big, and apparently I'm supposed to do something about it. The room erupted into chaos. Grellman, who had been quietly stewing, finally burst out, his gelatinous body vibrating with fury. This is exactly why I warned against further analysis. Now we've attracted the attention of forces we cannot control. Calm down, Administrator Crixall said sharply. Panic won't help us. Panic is the only reasonable response, Grellman shot back. As the argument escalated, Nate stood and waved his arms. Hey, can we focus on the part where I've been volunteered for an ancient alien Save the Universe project? Because I don't even know where to start. Before anyone could respond, the room dimmed, and the holographic monitors flickered to life. The alien ship was transmitting a new message. Carrier's integration must proceed. Remaining hostilities in local systems require immediate intervention. Hostilities, Crixall echoed, his eyes narrowing. The monitors shifted to show a fleet of ships on the outskirts of the Bureau's territory. They weren't from the alien vessel. These were ships belonging to the High Curia's enforcement arm, massive, angular constructs bristling with weapons. They're mobilizing against us, Zilfark said, his antennae drooping. Of course they are, Grellman wailed. The Curia won't tolerate an unknown entity within their jurisdiction. Nate rubbed his temples. Let me guess. They're planning to shoot first and ask questions never. Correct, Crixall said grimly. The alien ship's voice resonated again. Intervention required. Carrier must establish connection to repository. Repository, Nate asked. What does that mean? The repository, Crixall said, eyes widening. They mean the encoded information in your DNA. If you can unlock it, you might be able to communicate with the alien ship or even access whatever knowledge they entrusted to your lineage. That's a big if, Nate said. And how am I supposed to do that? Meditation, holding my breath. Perhaps the containment chamber, Zilfark suggested. It successfully triggered the beacon before. If we enhance the scanning process, it might facilitate a connection. Or vaporize me, Nate muttered. It's a risk, Crixall admitted, but if the Curia attacks that ship, the consequences could ripple across the galaxy. We don't have time to argue. Minutes later, Nate stood back in the containment chamber, trying to control his breathing. The enhanced scanning equipment hummed ominously, and a faint glow surrounded him as the process began. Are you sure this won't kill me? Nate called out. No, Crixall replied from the observation booth. But statistically, the odds are in your favor. Great pep talk, Nate muttered. The hum intensified, and the glow around Nate's body deepened. He felt the same strange warmth as before, but this time the sensations were sharper, more vivid. Images flashed in his mind, cities of light, vast archives of knowledge, and towering beings who seemed to watch him with an unspoken expectation. Then, he felt something shift. The encoded sequences in his DNA seemed to unravel, revealing a torrent of information that flowed into his consciousness. It was overwhelming, like trying to drink an ocean through a straw. But within the chaos, a single clear thought emerged. You are the bridge. The containment chamber powered down and Nate collapsed to the floor, gasping. Crixel rushed in, helping him to his feet. Did it work? Were you able to connect? Nate nodded, though his head throbbed. Yeah, I think I know what they want. The alien ship's voice echoed through the bureau once more. Carrier acknowledged, preparing transfer of repository. A beam of light shot down from the ship, passing through the bureau and connecting with Nate. He stood frozen as the light enveloped him, his body pulsing with energy. The repository's contents, countless lifetimes of knowledge, technology, and history flowed through him. He didn't understand it all, but one thing became clear: the ancient civilization had encoded more than just information. They had also left a fail-safe, a way to neutralize the very threat that now loomed on the galaxy's horizon. Nate's eyes glowed as he turned to Crixel. I know how to stop this, but I'm going to need your help. With Nate's newfound understanding, the Bureau sprang into action. Using the repository's knowledge, Crixel and the other researchers developed a device capable of intercepting and disabling the Curia fleet's weapon systems. It's a calculated risk, Crixel explained as they loaded the device onto a transport pod. If we succeed, it will force the Curia to stand down and open negotiations with the alien ship. If we fail, we all get vaporized, Nate finished. Got it. The transport pod launched, carrying Nate and the device toward the Curia fleet. As they approached, the fleet's ships locked onto them, weapons primed. This is a terrible idea, Nate muttered, gripping the controls. Perhaps, Crixel said over the comm. But it's the only idea we have. As the fleet's weapons charged, Nate activated the device. A pulse of energy rippled outward, disrupting the Curia's systems. The fleet's weapons powered down, their ships left vulnerable and unarmed. The alien ship seized the opportunity, projecting a message directly to the Curia fleet. We seek no conflict. The carrier is the bridge to understanding. Stand down, and we will share what we know. To everyone's astonishment, the Curia complied. In the days that followed, the galaxy's leaders gathered for an unprecedented summit aboard the alien ship. Nate, still recovering from his ordeal, was hailed as a reluctant hero. I'm just a guy, he insisted when Crixel congratulated him. A guy who happens to glow sometimes. Perhaps, Crixel said with a rare smile. But you're also proof that the galaxy is more interconnected than we ever imagined. Nate sighed, staring out at the stars. Well, I guess I've got some cosmic relatives to live up to. And as the alien ship began sharing its ancient knowledge with the galaxy, Nate couldn't help but wonder what other surprises his DNA might hold.